Brendan Mitchell, and welcome to the Conversation series. On this episode, I have Jane Yates. Jane is an educator and senior trainer from the United Kingdom. Welcome, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you. Now, whereabouts did you grow up?
I grew up in Bristol.
In Bristol?
Yeah.
And whereabouts in the UK is
That's west of London, so about an hour west of London.
And now where are you based?
I actually live now in the north of the country, just near the border with Scotland, near a tiny town called Penrith.
And do you spend a lot of time in Scotland training as such, or?
Yes, yeah. I suppose I do half and half, training in Scotland and half in England. So.
In England, yep. And what inspired you to be a teacher initially? What led you down the road of teaching?
Well, interestingly, I never wanted to be a teacher, and I said all of my sort of teenage time I didn't want to be a teacher because my dad had been a very good teacher and he was really inspirational, but I didn't want to do that. Maybe that was a typical rebellious thing. And very at the last minute, I'd planned to go and do theatre and English, but at the very last minute, the week before the term started, I decided to go and do outdoor education because I wanted to take people climbing and walking in the mountains. I just had a complete change of what I wanted to do over the holidays. So, yeah, I had never planned to be a teacher.
And then when you graduated from your initial teacher education program, did you go into a primary school from there?
Yeah. Well, because when you train although my specialism was outdoor education, you still have to get a probationary year.
Yes.
So, I was keen to make sure that I got that probationary year. And actually, when I found that when I did the course, I really enjoyed teaching. A lot of that time I was teaching pupils outside in more sort of informal settings. But it was sort of quite a nice surprise to me that I enjoyed teaching inside a school as well. So,
I think you'd be a super teacher. As we were discussing the other day, I was going to attend one of your courses in the UK, and I wish I had of, but maybe one day in the future we'll see from there. Now, you became involved with Philosophy for Children 25 years ago. You must be one of the pioneers almost in the UK in there. Yeah,
well, I was very lucky. I did a few years of teaching, and then I got the opportunity to go and work in a university with students. And while I was there, it was actually the university that I trained at. So while I was there, one of the lecturers, Chris Rowley, who had seen the infamous film on Socrates for 6-year-olds, and another fellow lecturer had seen it, not when I was there, but a few years before. And they said, we need to find out about this. And the pair of them went on Matthew Lipman's training. So by the time I came back to work at the university, and they'd already been on the Matthew Lipman training, and they said, come along to our philosophy sessions. So I went, and they had all the Lipman materials, and I went as quite a young and unconfident person initially, and I thought, I can't say all these long words. I felt really out of my comfort zone, particularly with much more experienced lecturers, but I just really enjoyed the experience. I can remember it so vividly, even though it's about 25 years ago. So they were very much in that experimental stage of learning about P4C, and then so after a while they set up some projects working in local schools, and I got the opportunity to go and work alongside them doing that. And some of the projects involved drama, some involved geography, all sorts of different projects. So and then as a result of that, I used it then. I had a teaching role then, and so I used it in my own classroom. But I will say, at the beginning, I felt I was quite unconfident using it. Didn't know if I was doing it the right way. And I think that's quite helpful because I understand when I train teachers how they maybe feel when they first see it and they see films. Then you think, wow, how can you get children to do this? And so I feel like I remember that time for myself. And it wasn't until I did my level 2 training that I kind of, became more confident and got a grasp of what was involved.
Now, were you still working at the university at this stage while you were initially implementing P4C?
After doing a number of years teaching in a different part of the country, I went back as a freelance, and I had various different jobs that I did. I had a period in my life where I did some work in the university, I had a teaching contract, and I worked for another organisation doing something called global learning training. So I had all of these different places that I could try out philosophy for children.
Okay, and what does the do with the global learning training? What's that involve?
Well, so at that time I worked for a development education centre, and I'd say my background is actually environmental education, but in my early 20s I went travelling quite a lot and seeing different cultures, different countries, and being exposed to poverty, then coming back to Britain and seeing people's sort of misconceptions about countries. So the global learning can help young people to have a wider view of the world, have different perspectives of the world, understand things like poverty and development, and trying to see through stereotypes and challenge their own perceptions. So, and it seemed, I suppose I came to P4C through a global learning methodology, and they seem to sit quite nicely together. So they're not quite the same, but there's similar, the sort of methodology is there's some similar aspects. I felt that in many ways that's been my sort of expertise, has been developing philosophy for children through global learning contexts.
And then you've got a broad educational base. I see that you've got your master's is in environmental and developmental education. How does the development fit with the environmental? Are we looking at the physical environment, or? Yeah,
I mean that was when I did that master's, it was a new master's, and it was the first time that there had been a master's in at the time education for sustainability. So linking both development in terms of sort of poverty development, for example, and environment, still seeing those two connected. So I was quite excited when I saw this new master's course, and I wanted to be part of it. So I was one of the first cohort of students that did that course, to bring those two, rather than to have them as separate things, to bring them together through education for sustainability. So, realising that maybe, there are environmental factors that influence people's, that might influence poverty, for example. So.
And was the Masters before or after your training in programs in giving something to the people in Nepal and India?
That was before. Yeah, that's been more recent that I've had the opportunity to go out to India and Nepal and do philosophy for children.
And how did they take to it there?
In Nepal, it was already an organisation that were doing P4C. So I'd contacted them to say I was going to be there because I was on a trekking trip. Okay. So they were delighted that I came and did some. But the in India work which followed was a commission that they wanted to do P4C. That was very different. So it was a complete contrast because, for example, in the Nepal setting, we had a power shedding that went on. So we ended up doing the training by candlelight. And it was quite more sort of difficult, more challenging schools. Whereas the Indian school the Indian teachers that came were actually the kind of high elite of New Delhi, the kind of Eton and Harrows of New Delhi. So that was really interesting to. But I always find it quite heartening that when you do training, and I have this, maybe in England and Scotland I might work in private schools sometimes, and then I might work in quite disadvantaged schools, but I always find it quite heartening that actually you have teachers on the training, and they can, the questions that they ask in Philosophy for Children, they can be quite similar. And I think that, equally globally, there's a levelling. I find P4C as a real leveller, particularly when you run mixed courses. So.
And you see the students embrace it globally?
Yes, yeah.
And you see the improvements in there, just generally in them as people, do you, academically as well?
Yeah, I mean, definitely academically, but also, having that voice to be able to share their ideas and learn from each other. So.
And I hope that I have the opportunity to learn from you again, Jane. And as I said to you earlier on, I wish that I had have done your course, and the timing had have worked out when you were, just outside of Liverpool, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ellesmere. Yeah. I think you would have enjoyed that course. You would have.
Oh, I'm sure I would have.
We had another person from Brunei.
From
it
Brunei.
Would have really
added.
It was quite a lively. Interesting course. I think you would have enjoyed it.
Maybe next time, maybe another time, and hopefully. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, Jane. Thank you.